Picture this. A man is just standing there in front of a firing squad.
Right. The absolute end of the line.
Exactly. He is literally looking down the barrels of the rifles that are, about to end his life.
Yeah.
And in those final stretching seconds, you would entirely expect a person's mind to, race through their greatest achievements.
Or just experience paralyzing terror.
Right. But for Colonel Aureliano Buendía, facing that firing squad, his mind just doesn't go to his impending death at all.
It's wild. It entirely bypasses the war he fought.
Yeah, instead it drifts back across the decades to a distant, incredibly specific childhood afternoon.
A very specific memory.
He remembers the day his father took him to discover ice.
That image is just, it's a profound inversion of how we typically think about time and mortality.
Oh, absolutely.
Like the threat of annihilation doesn't provoke a flash forward to the afterlife, right?
No, not at all.
And it isn't this desperate clinging to the present either. It triggers a retreat into the sensory memory of a childhood marvel.
Yeah, which brings us to what we're doing today. We are taking you deep into the foundational text of Gabriel García Márquez's 100 Years of Solitude.
Such a massive, incredible work.
It really is. We are dissecting the sweeping early history of the Buendía family and their isolated, utopian-turned-dystopian village of Macondo.
Right.
We are looking at a world where the monumental and the mundane are completely, inexplicably intertwined.
And to be clear, our mission in this deep dive into the source material isn't just to, recount a bizarre family tree.
No, definitely not.
We are decoding how the history of this family and the very ground Macondo is built upon acts as a mirror for human obsession.
We are looking at generational trauma and the chaotic march of progress.
Because when you really get into these sources, the lines between myth and science and between sanity and madness, they're completely blurred.
Oh, completely.
We aren't just dealing with magical realism as a literary trick. We are examining it as a psychological coping mechanism.
Precisely. The text treats the magical as everyday reality, and the everyday reality of science and progress as if it were absolute magic.
Yeah, that cognitive inversion is the foundation of this entire universe.
Right, and to understand Macondo, you really have to understand that the people who founded it weren't pioneers looking for a fresh start.
Not at all. They were exiles.
Exactly. They were running from ghosts, both literal and historical.
So let's trace that back, because the trauma that births Macondo doesn't just start with a bad decision in a swamp.
No, it goes way further back.
It traces back 300 years to a historical event. Sir Francis Drake attacks Riohacha with cannons and hunting dogs.
Which is an intense way to start a family history.
Right. Now, the great-great-grandmother of our eventual matriarch, Úrsula Iguarán, is so terrified by the alarm bells of this pirate attack that she entirely loses control of her nerves.
Just a complete panic response.
And she sits down on a lighted stove.
Which is just a terrifying, visceral reaction to fear.
It is. But think about the mechanics of that panic. She is so consumed by the hypothetical threat of the pirates that she physically destroys herself with a very real, immediate danger.
Right. She basically ruins herself physically to escape a noise.
Yeah, she suffers severe burns that essentially ruin her socially and physically. She is forced to spend the rest of her life sitting on one side, cushioned by pillows.
Oh, man.
And she becomes totally obsessed with the phantom smell of her own singed flesh.
Yeah, that's so dark.
Her husband ends up building her a windowless bedroom in a hidden village, purely so she won't dream of pirates breaking in.
Which, that single moment of panic really establishes the psychological blueprint for the entire Buendía bloodline, doesn't it?
Absolutely. They construct elaborate, isolating prisons to avoid perceived threats.
Great. And because her husband moves her to that hidden village, he enters into a lucrative partnership with a native-born tobacco planter named Don José Arcadio Buendía.
Right, the namesake of our patriarch.
Yeah. So 3 centuries later, the great-great-granddaughter of the burned woman, who is Úrsula, right,
she marries the great-great-grandson of that planter, our patriarch, also named José Arcadio Buendía.
Meaning they are cousins.
Exactly. They are cousins. And that shared bloodline breeds an absolute paralyzing ancestral guilt.
I want to challenge the nature of that guilt, though, for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Ursula's mother has filled her head with warnings that interbreeding cousins will give birth to children with animal features.
Right. Specifically, children with cartilaginous pig's tails.
Yeah, so is this just a superstitious fear of incest, or is it a broader terror of the past physically manifesting in the present?
Well, I think it's the latter, absolutely. For them, the pig's tail isn't just a myth, you know?
Right. There is a horrifying verified precedent in their own family.
Exactly. An aunt and an uncle previously had a son born with a corkscrew pig's tail.
And the tragedy isn't just the deformity itself, it's the desperate attempt to hide it.
Yeah, the guy lived to be 42 as a virgin, just concealing his secret in these baggy pants. Right, until a butcher friend tried to chop it off with a cleaver, and he bled to death.
Which is just horrific.
It is, but the tail represents the inescapable consequence of their ancestry.
Yeah, like you can hide the past in baggy pants all you want, but trying to literally sever yourself from it will kill you.
And that fear completely dictates the psychological state of Úrsula and José Arcadio Buendía as newlyweds.
Oh, completely. Ursula is so terrified of consummating the marriage and producing a monster that she goes to these extreme, almost medieval lengths.
Right, the chastity pants.
Yes. The sources describe her wearing this rudimentary, formidable garment to bed every single night.
It's practically armor.
It is. It's made of sailcloth, reinforced with crisscross leather straps, and secured with a thick iron buckle.
The chastity pants are a brilliant, tragic symbol, really.
Oh, for sure.
They represent the physical manifestation of her psychological barrier. Every night, the couple engages in this anguished, violent wrestling match, trying to bypass this armor.
And fails.
Right, and failing. And then, during the day, they just go about their normal lives as if nothing is wrong.
Like, he tends his fighting cocks. She embroiders with her mother.
But you cannot maintain that level of nightly physical frustration and daytime repression without something eventually fracturing.
No, exactly. And the fracture comes from the outside, as it usually does.
Right.
In a small town, a marriage that hasn't been consummated doesn't stay a secret for long.
Oh, never.
Rumors start circulating that José Arcadio Buendía is impotent.
Yeah.
The private trauma becomes a public humiliation, which leads directly to the fatal cockfight.
Right, where José Arcadio Buendía's rooster defeats the rooster of a man named Prudencio Aguilar.
And Aguilar is humiliated.
Yeah.
And in a moment of pure, stinging resentment, he decides to strike at José Arcadio's deepest insecurity in front of the entire town.
He essentially congratulates him and suggests that maybe José Arcadio's rooster can do his wife a favor.
Which is just a brutal thing to say.
It is. Aguilar is leveraging a private shame for public vengeance. And it is a fatal miscalculation.
Oh, incredibly fatal.
Because José Arcadio Buendía doesn't shout back. He doesn't engage in a verbal dispute.
No, he calmly goes home, retrieves his grandfather's notched spear, returns to the pit, and just drives it straight through Prudencio Aguilar's throat.
It's a sudden, horrifying escalation.
1 second, it's wounded pride, and the next, there's a corpse with a spear through its neck.
But this is where the text introduces its specific brand of supernatural consequence.
Right.
Because Prudencio Aguilar doesn't disappear into the afterlife. He haunts them.
Yet he doesn't haunt them the way a traditional ghost would, you know?
No, this isn't a malicious poltergeist throwing plates or seeking vengeance.
Not at all.
The haunting is profoundly pathetic. Ursula goes to the courtyard and finds Prudencio's ghost standing by the water jar.
And he is livid, sad, and trying to plug the gaping hole in his throat with a wad of esparto grass.
Yeah, he wandered their home, desperately searching for water to clean his clotted blood and soak his grass plug.
Which begs the question, why a sad ghost?
Right, usually a murdered man returns with fury.
Exactly. But Aguilar returns with a profound sense of isolation. José Arcadio Buendía tries to act the tough guy at first, threatening the ghost, telling it he will kill it again.
Yeah, but the sheer immense desolation of this dead man breaks him down.
He realizes that Aguilar isn't a monster. He's just another lonely consequence of human pride.
José Arcadio tells Ursula that the dead man is so very lonely.
And the guilt just becomes completely unbearable.
Right, and that guilt forces the migration. They realize they cannot share a domestic space with the physical manifestation of their sin.
So they pack up, they bury the spear, they slaughter all their magnificent fighting cocks to give the ghost peace, and they literally walk off into the impenetrable mountains.
Yeah, they spend over 2 years wandering, eating monkey meat and snake stew.
All to found a new life where the ghost cannot follow them.
But does running ever actually work?
Right. I mean, it's essentially like moving across the country to escape a bad breakup, but instead of bringing on emotional baggage, you literally bring your victim's ghost in your suitcase.
Yeah.
Can you ever truly outrun your past, or does the act of running just build the foundation for your future?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, Macondo is founded on a paradox.
Okay, how so?
It is presented initially as an Eden, It's an isolated utopia where the world is so new that things don't even have names yet.
Right, you have to point at them.
But it is an Eden built by exiles who are fleeing their own violent actions. And because they isolated themselves to escape their past, they create an enormous cultural vacuum.
And nature abhors a vacuum.
Exactly. So into this pristine isolation steps the outside world, embodied by a family of ragged gypsies who visit every March.
Yes. The gypsies introduce the primary conflict of the next era, which is the illusion of progress versus the reality of isolation.
Their leader is Melquiades, described as a heavy gypsy with an untamed beard and sparrow hands.
And this guy has seen some things. He has survived every plague known to humanity.
Pellagra, scurvy, leprosy, bubonic plague, earthquakes, and shipwreck.
Just an absolute survivor. He is enveloped in this gloomy, sad aura, but he arrives in Macondo acting as the harbinger of science.
He brings what he calls the eighth wonder of the learned alchemists of Macedonia.
Right, which is just 2 metal ingots. Magnets.
Melquiades uses these magnets for a theatrical display, dragging them through the town and physically pulling pots, pans, and loose nails out of the houses.
Yeah, he proclaims that things have a life of their own. It's simply a matter of waking up their souls.
But here we see the tragedy of José Arcadio Buendia's intellect. His imagination is vast, but it entirely lacks any empirical tether.
Right. He sees a parlor trick and immediately misinterprets its utility. He becomes convinced he can use these magnets to extract gold from the earth.
Which feels like the ultimate precursor to modern tech bro hubris, honestly.
Oh, absolutely. He sees a new piece of technology and assumes it can bypass the fundamental laws of nature and economics.
And Melquiades is actually honest with him. He explicitly tells José Arcadio that the magnets won't work for finding gold.
But José Arcadio just ignores the expert.
Yeah.
He trades his mule and a pair of goats, which, by the way, represents a massive chunk of his family's domestic wealth and survival capability, just to acquire these 2 magnets.
Right. And he drags them all over the region, pulling them through the riverbed for months.
And what is the result of this obsessive technological pursuit? He doesn't find gold.
He unearths a rusty 15th century suit of armor.
Yeah, and when they dismantle it, there is a calcified skeleton inside with a copper locket containing a woman's hair around its neck.
It's an incredibly potent metaphor. He sacrifices his present livelihood to use new technology to build a wealthy future, and all he manages to dig up is the dead, calcified past.
A literal skeleton in armor. It's a stark warning that technology doesn't erase history. It often just exhumes it.
Exactly. But this monumental failure doesn't deter him in the slightest.
Of course not. It just primes him for the next obsession.
The following year, the gypsies return with a telescope and a giant magnifying glass.
Ah, the magnifying glass sequence. This is where we see his scientific ambition mutate into something genuinely destructive.
Right. The gypsies use the glass to set a pile of hay on fire by concentrating the sun's rays.
And José Arcadio Buendía witnesses this and doesn't think of cooking or warmth or agriculture.
No, his mind immediately leaps to solar warfare. He decides he is going to weaponize the sun against enemy troops.
It's madness. He trades Úrsula's buried inheritance, a chest of colonial gold coins her father saved for her entire life, just to get this magnifying glass.
Which is just devastating for Úrsula. She weeps in consternation.
Well, yeah, she is the grounding force, the one actually keeping the family fed and clothed, while her husband is trading their financial security for a piece of glass.
And he exposes himself to the concentrated sun, severely burning his own body, all to write a tactical manual for solar warfare.
And then he sends this manual, along with various vials of scorched evidence, across impassable swamps to a government that doesn't even know Macondo exists.
And of course, the government never answers. He is a man operating entirely out of time and place.
Eventually, Melquiades takes pity on him, right?
He does. He returns the gold coins and leaves José Arcadio with Portuguese maps, an astrolabe, a compass, and a sextant.
Which kicks off an intense period of astronomical awakening.
José Arcadio locks himself in a small room, completely abandons his family duties, and spends months obsessively tracking the stars.
He nearly gives himself sunstroke trying to establish an exact method to ascertain noon.
And this culminates in one of the most heartbreaking and hilarious moments in the sources.
Oh, I love this part.
He finally emerges from his room, physically devastated by his vigil, gathers his family around, and declares with devastating absolute solemnity, "The earth is round like an orange."
And his deduction is flawless. He has independently arrived at a fundamental truth of astrophysics.
But look at the reaction. Ursula completely loses her patience.
Yeah, she smashes the astrolabe against the floor and screams, "If you have to go crazy, please go crazy all by yourself."
The entire town concludes he has finally lost his mind. It isn't until Melquiades returns later and validates his discovery that anyone believes him.
I think we have to pause here and seriously evaluate José Arcadio Buendía. Like, is he actually crazy?
That's the big question.
If you drop a genius into an environment with no infrastructure, no peer review, and no prior scientific foundation, their genius is functionally indistinguishable from madness.
Right, he is like a man trying to build a microprocessor using only mud and twigs.
Exactly. He has the theoretical vision, but his context makes him look insane.
And for the listener, think about how much context dictates the value of your own knowledge.
Yeah, if you have a brilliant idea but lack the vocabulary to explain it or the network to support it, you are just a person shouting in a swamp.
Innovation without application is inherently isolating. It builds walls rather than bridges,
Right.
and his isolation only deepens as he transitions from astronomy to alchemy.
Oh, the alchemy phase. Melquiades leaves him a rudimentary alchemist's laboratory, a philosopher's egg, a three-armed alembic.
And José Arcadio becomes convinced he can double the quantity of gold.
He spends weeks manipulating Ursula to get her gold coins back.
Yeah.
He melts her inheritance down with copper filings, orpiment, brimstone, and lead.
He boils it in castor oil and hog fat.
Just a total mess. He engages in this desperate hermetic distillation process, and the result.
Ursula's precious colonial inheritance is reduced to a piece of burnt hog cracklings stuck to the bottom of a pot.
The destruction of the gold is the destruction of their practical safety net, all in the name of a theoretical future.
And this relentless push for progress eventually forces him to look outward. He realizes Macondo is geographically isolated.
So he leads an expedition to find a route to civilization. He takes the men of the town, and they hack their way through a primeval, bloody jungle.
The environment is described as smelling of blood and steaming oil. It's a hostile, prehistoric space.
And at the end of this grueling, terrifying journey, they don't find a bustling city or a trade route.
No, they find an impossible, surreal sight. An enormous Spanish galleon, miles inland, stranded in a forest of orchids, entirely covered in petrified barnacles.
It's the ultimate gut punch. It's a staggering image of colonial decay.
Yeah, finding a shipwreck in the middle of a jungle proves that they aren't pioneers pushing into untouched territory.
No, they were just trapped in the rotting ruins of someone else's empire.
The galleon proves that they are surrounded by impassable water and jungle. It breaks his spirit because it confirms their absolute geographical confinement.
But the tragedy of his character is that his despair is always fleeting, right? It's easily overwritten by the next novelty.
Because shortly after the galleon discovery, the gypsies return with their final wonder of this era. Ice.
Ice. It arrives in a giant pirate chest that gives off a glacial exhalation.
And José Arcadio Buendía pays just to touch it. He puts his hand on it, instantly pulls it back, claiming it's boiling, and declares it the great invention of our time.
He totally forgets his failures. He forgets the rotting galleon, entirely intoxicated by the miracle of frozen water.
Yet, while the patriarch is lost in the cosmos, boiling gold and marveling at ice, his relentless obsession creates a massive vacuum within his own home.
Yeah, he is physically present but emotionally entirely absent.
Which brings us to the profound generational damage inflicted on his two sons.
Right. José Arcadio, the older brother named after him, and Aureliano, the younger.
These boys develop in an environment of obsessive neglect, and the contrast in how they adapt to that environment is striking.
We see a stark bifurcation of the father's traits between the two sons.
The older brother, José Arcadio, inherits his father's monumental physical proportions and his raw, impulsive drive.
But he entirely lacks his father's imagination.
Yeah, he's described as having a square head and thick hair. He's a creature of pure physicality.
While Aureliano, conversely, inherits the internal observational intensity.
The sources note that Aureliano wept in the womb.
Yeah, he was born with his eyes wide open, silently examining the room.
Aureliano possesses an unnerving clairvoyance. At just 3 years old, he watches a pot of boiling soup sitting perfectly safe in the center of the table and casually remarks, "It's gonna spill."
And then, as if impelled by some inner dynamism, the pot slides to the edge and smashes on the floor.
But the father ignores this phenomenon completely, absorbed in his own alchemical speculations.
And because the father offers no guidance, the older brother, José Arcadio, is left to navigate his impending adulthood alone.
Which leads to a visceral, terrifying sexual awakening with a woman named Pilar Ternera.
Pilar Ternera is a foundational figure in Macondo. She arrived with the original founders, carrying her own unspoken trauma of abandonment.
She helps the Buendía family with domestic chores and reads the future in a deck of cards.
And one day, while reading José Arcadio's cards in the granary, she simply places her hand on him and says, "Lordy."
That single unprompted physical touch initiates a brutal, overwhelming anxiety in him.
And the sources do not romanticize this awakening at all. It is portrayed as sheer terror. When he finally sneaks out to her house at night, the journey is described as a descent into a bottomless darkness.
He is profoundly disoriented, stumbling blindly into hammocks in the dark.
Overwhelmed by sensory details, the smell of ammonia, the specific smell of smoke under her armpits.
He describes feeling his bones filling with foam. He is tossed around like a sack of potatoes.
It is a surrender to a purely physical momentum that terrifies him just as much as it compels him.
He is experiencing intimacy not as connection, but as an overwhelming natural disaster.
And what is Aureliano doing during all this? He is absorbing his brother's physical awakening entirely intellectually.
José Arcadio confesses everything to him.
Yeah, when Aureliano asks what love actually feels like, José Arcadio can only articulate it physically, like an earthquake.
Aureliano begins living vicariously through his brother. He stays up all night waiting to hear the details of José Arcadio's encounters.
Catching the same emotional fever but processing it entirely in his mind, isolated from the physical reality.
This unbridled physical momentum eventually propels José Arcadio entirely out of Macondo's orbit.
Right, because a new, different group of gypsies arrives in town, bringing a chaotic carnival atmosphere totally distinct from Melchiades' scientific wonders.
And José Arcadio spots a very young gypsy girl, described rather starkly as a languid little frog with incipient breasts.
He engages with her in a public tent surrounded by the noise of the carnival.
Then, completely consumed by raw instinct, he ties a red cloth around his head and simply vanishes with the gypsies, abandoning his family without a word.
He literally runs away to join the circus.
He does.
And this leaves Úrsula, his mother, absolutely frantic. She abandons her pragmatic grounding and sets off into the wilderness to find him.
And here is the incredible, bitter irony of the sources. Úrsula's desperate, emotionally driven search for her son actually leads her to discover the viable route to civilization.
The exact route that her husband completely failed to find with all his scientific instruments and Portuguese maps.
Exactly. While Úrsula is gone, the domestic structure collapses further, and Aureliano's emotional isolation deepens to a critical point.
He visits Caterino's store, which functions as the town's rudimentary brothel, and has an encounter that perfectly encapsulates his psychological paralysis.
He meets a young adolescent girl there.
And the backstory of this girl is just one of the most heartbreaking details in the entire text.
It really is.
2 years prior, she accidentally fell asleep with a candle and burned her family's house down.
And now, her grandmother carries her from town to town, forcing her to sleep with 70 men a night for 10 years, just to pay off the debt of the burned house.
It's awful. Aureliano goes into her room, but he doesn't act on any physical desire.
No, he is paralyzed by a profound, agonizing pity.
He wants to save her. He is tormented by an overwhelming urge to marry her, to rescue her from this unending cycle of exploitation.
But his intellect and his empathy do not translate into action.
Right.
He is completely incapable of intervening in reality. He ultimately does nothing. He leaves her 20 cents and walks away, trapping himself in his own inaction.
If we look at this family dynamic, I really have to push back on the idea that Macondo ever functioned as a paradise.
Yeah, look at what has actually happened.
Exactly. We have a father trying to photograph God and boiling his wife's inheritance in hog fat.
And we have one teenage son wandering blindly through the dark to find a card reader because he has no paternal guidance.
And the other son, paralyzed by the tragedy of a burned girl, completely unable to connect.
They all share a house, but they are living in entirely separate private universes.
Do any of them actually know each other?
You know, you are hitting on the central philosophical thesis of the material right there.
Okay, which is?
The true nature of solitude. In the context of Macondo, solitude is not a physical state of being alone in a room.
Right.
It is a profound existential inability to truly connect with another human being's reality.
You can share a bed, you can share a lineage, but you remain trapped in the solitary confinement of your own obsessions and traumas.
Exactly. And just as we realize how deeply disconnected this family is, the outside world breaches Macondo again.
When Ursula returns, having discovered the route to civilization, she brings an influx of strangers, new commerce, and one very strange orphan named Rebecca.
Rebecca arrives at the age of 11, sent by distant, unknown relatives.
And she shows up carrying a canvas sack that contains her parents' bones.
And the bones literally cluck like a hen when she walks,
Cluck, cluck, cluck.
which is just deeply unsettling. Rebecca is the physical manifestation of buried, unresolved trauma entering the household.
She is deeply withdrawn. She sits in a rocking chair, sucking her fingers, staring out at the world with large, startled eyes.
And she brings with her a terrifying secret vice. She eats the damp earth of the courtyard and scrapes whitewash off the walls with her fingernails to consume it.
Eating dirt. It is such an ancestral, primal appetite.
She is literally tricking to consume the foundation of her new home to feel grounded. And Ursula, being the eternal pragmatist, tries to cure this psychological trauma with physical remedies.
Right. She gives her rhubarb and orange juice and even rubs hot chili on the walls to stop the scraping.
But Rebecca's arrival is just a precursor to a much larger existential catastrophe that attacks the entire town.
Yes, the insomnia plague. Visitation, a Guajiro Indian woman who works in the Buendía household, is the first to recognize the threat.
She observes Rebecca's glowing cat-like eyes in the dark and realizes what is happening.
Visitation and her brother are actually royalty who fled their ancestral kingdoms specifically to escape this exact plague.
She explains the terrifying counterintuitive nature of the disease. The horror is not the lack of sleep.
Right, the body does not feel fatigue.
Exactly. The true horror is the slow, inexorable erasure of memory.
It's a disease that eats your past. Visitation explains the progression. First, you lose your childhood memories.
Then you forget the names and notions of things around you.
Then you forget the identities of the people you love.
And finally, you lose the awareness of your own being.
It's a descent into an idiocy that has no past and therefore no future.
When the plague officially hits the Buendía house, they spend the nights wide awake, hallucinating.
They try to exhaust themselves by telling looping, endless jokes, like the story of the capon. But the sleep never comes.
And soon, the cognitive decay begins.
Aureliano is the first to consciously realize the memory loss is taking hold.
He is working in his silver shop and suddenly realizes he cannot remember the name of the tool he uses to flatten the metal.
His father tells him it's an anvil or a stake.
To prevent losing the word again, Aureliano writes the name on a piece of paper and pastes it to the base of the tool.
And this pragmatic act sparks José Arcadio Buendia's next great obsession, the defense of reality through a massive labeling system.
He takes a brush and ink and furiously starts labeling everything in his physical environment.
Table, chair, clock, door, wall, bed, pan.
He goes out to the corral and labels the animals. Cow, goat, pig.
But then, a terrifying realization hits him. Just knowing the arbitrary name of an object isn't enough to sustain reality if you forget what the object actually does.
Right, the signs must become increasingly descriptive to combat the fading context.
The most famous example in the text is the sign hung on the cow.
It reads, "This is the cow. She must be milked every morning so that she will produce milk, and the milk must be boiled in order to be mixed with coffee to make coffee and milk."
They are forced to construct elaborate instruction manuals for everyday existence.
They even put up a sign at the entrance of the swamp saying Macondo, and a larger one on the main street declaring God exists.
I want you, the listener, to really think about the modern parallels here.
Oh, there are so many.
If you have to write a manual for how to look at a cow, haven't you already lost the essence of what a cow is?
Absolutely.
We do this today. We outsource our memories to external drives. We rely entirely on search engines, photo apps, and digital calendars to tell us who we are and what we did.
But what happens if you look at a photo on your phone, and while you recognize the faces, the emotional context behind the memory is totally vanished?
It's terrifying. You are left with the label, but the soul of the memory is gone.
It is a brilliant, striking commentary on the fragility of language and culture.
Yeah.
A word is just a vessel. It only holds value if the community remembers the meaning poured into it.
As the town loses its grip on reality, they realize the labels will eventually become useless because they will forget how to read the letters.
In their desperation, they turn back to Pilar Ternera. She begins using her fortune-telling cards not to predict the future, but to read the forgotten past.
A father is remembered vaguely only as the dark man who arrived in April.
The society is desperately trying to construct a narrative out of scattered fragments, grasping at anything to avoid slipping into the void.
And they are only saved by an external intervention. Melquiades returns.
He literally returns from the dead, claiming he couldn't bear the profound solitude of death.
He arrives carrying a suitcase of indecipherable objects. He sees his old friend, José Arcadio Buendía, struggling, gives him a magic potion of a gentle color, and instantly his memory is flooded back.
He weeps upon recognizing Melquiades.
The restoration of memory marks a pivotal shift. With their history intact, the town of Macondo rapidly modernizes.
But this modernization brings the very elements they initially fled into the swamp to avoid.
Right, state bureaucracy, political mandates, and the superficial complexities of high society.
Úrsula, who consistently proves to be the true engine of practical progress in the family, decides the house needs a massive expansion.
Motivated by her now teenage daughters, Rebecca and Amaranta, she builds a sprawling modern mansion equipped with formal parlors and bohemian crystal.
But with the bohemian crystal comes the government.
Into this newly modernized town walks Don Apolinar Moscota, the magistrate.
He arrives quietly, without an army. He just sets up a table, nails the shield of the Republic to the wall, and issues a decree.
All houses must be painted blue to celebrate the anniversary of national independence.
Now, pause and consider this. Macondo has been completely self-governing up to this point.
They built the roads, distributed the land fairly, and survived a literal plague of amnesia without a single piece of help from the central government.
It is the ultimate clash between utopian self-governance and arbitrary state bureaucracy.
And José Arcadio Buendía confronts him.
And it is important to note how the sources handle this. It is presented neutrally, not as a political manifesto, but as an inevitable friction between an independent founder and an external system of control.
Yeah, we're not taking sides here, just reporting what happens. José Arcadio Buendía tells the magistrate they don't need a judge because there is nothing to judge.
When the magistrate threatens him, claiming he is armed, José Arcadio doesn't grab a spear like he did with Aguilar.
No, he handles it with a kind of overwhelming physical paternalism.
Right.
He literally picks the magistrate up by his lapels, lifts him to eye level, and carries him down the street, depositing him on the road out of town.
He says, "I'm doing this because I would rather carry you around alive and not have to keep carrying you around dead for the rest of my life."
He remembers the ghost of Aguilar. He refuses to inherit another ghost.
The magistrate eventually returns with armed soldiers, but José Arcadio enforces a bloodless, practical compromise.
He tells the magistrate he can stay in Macondo as a figurehead, purely out of respect for the man's wife and daughters.
But the soldiers must leave, and the townspeople will paint their houses whatever color they wish.
José Arcadio declares his own house will remain white, like a dove.
It's victory for Macondo's independence, but it's the beginning of the end of their innocence.
It reminds me of someone building a self-sustaining commune in the woods, surviving off the land for decades, and then one day, a guy from a homeowners association shows up with a clipboard saying your mailbox is the wrong height.
Perfect analogy. Progress is no longer magical magnets or magnifying glasses. It's paperwork, decrees, and armed guards.
And that shift from raw magical potential to cultivated European manners is perfectly symbolized by the arrival of the pianola and the man sent to assemble it, Pietro Crespi.
He is an Italian expert, beautifully dressed, pale, impeccably mannered despite the sweltering heat.
He introduces automated music to the new mansion and teaches the girls modern dances. The rough edges of Macondo are being sanded down.
We have gone from fighting off the erasure of memory and boiling gold and hog fat to arguing over paint colors and taking dance lessons in a parlor.
It feels like Macondo traded its profound raw magic for polite society. And you have to wonder if this progress is actually a downgrade for the human soul.
Because we need to look at what happens to Rebecca. She seems perfectly integrated into this new high society.
She learns the dances, she helps Pietro fix the pianola, she wears the nice clothes.
But the sources reveal the tragic fragility of that civilizing veneer. After Pietro Crespi leaves, following a farewell dance, Rebecca locks herself in her room.
She weeps inconsolably for days.
And then, overwhelmed by an unspoken desperate desire for the Italian, she is overcome by a primal urge.
She doesn't write a poem or play the pianola.
No, she secretly returns to eating handfuls of damp earth and scraping whitewash off the walls.
No, she consumes the dirt with a confused feeling of pleasure and rage, trying to cope with an emotion that polite society has given her no tools to process.
Oh, it's a devastating image.
To synthesize this incredible journey we've been on today, we started with a man dragging magnets through a riverbed looking for a shortcut to wealth.
We saw a family flee a ghost to found a utopian city. only realize they brought their isolation with them.
We watch them fight off the literal erasure of their identities by writing instructions on a cow.
And we end with an automated pianola and a bureaucratic magistrate painting houses blue.
It is an absolute masterclass in how obsession, trauma, and isolation shape human destiny.
And while the setting is undeniably framed in magical realism, the psychological flaws driving these events are entirely real.
Oh, very much so.
We all have our own magnets that we drag through the mud, hoping for a quick fix to a complex problem.
We all construct our own labeling systems through journals, social media curation, or carefully chosen words to keep our fragile realities from slipping away into the void.
The profound solitude of the Buendía family is simply a magnified reflection of the isolation we all occasionally feel when our inner lives fail to connect with the people standing right next to us.
So, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
Think about Rebecca.
She is sitting in a newly built, expensive mansion. She is surrounded by bohemian crystal. She is listening to perfectly automated Italian music.
And yet, she is secretly stuffing her pockets with dirt, consuming the very earth beneath her feet to deal with her heartbreak.
Consider this in your own life. No matter how deeply we try to pave over our past, no matter how much we attempt to civilize our surroundings with technology, rules, and fine manners, how much of our true, unpolished, feral nature is just waiting for the exact right moment of heartbreak to claw its way back to the surface.
We build these elaborate, beautiful structures to contain our lives, but the foundation is always built on the damp earth.
And sometimes the ghosts we thought we walked away from are patiently waiting in the new rooms we built.
Next time you see a beautifully painted blue house or a perfectly curated digital memory, remember the damp earth underneath it.
Because in the murky waters of human history and memory, nothing is ever entirely paved over. Thank you for joining this deep dive into the source material. Catch you next time.